Hello, so I'm just basically going to do a quick revision video on Sigmund Freud and his views on the conscience. So he was a psychologist born in 1854 and died in 1939. Yes, that's correct. No, it's not correct. Born in 1856 and died in 1939. Okay, so yeah, basically Freud was a psychologist, and he's quite a controversial one at that. Even to this day, most of his ideas still holds a lot of controversy due to his, I guess, he believes that everything is related to sex, and people, I guess, disagree with that, especially from religious communities where sex isn't necessarily seen as a primal drive, or whatever. I got to... Sex isn't seen as a primal drive. So Freud talked about sex, talked about guilt, he talked about all these different things. He talked about, so what was Freud's perspective on conscience? Freud believed that the conscience was just repressed guilt from the child, or our was a repressed id. And the id is basically our instinctual mind. So the id gets repressed, and the conscience, and our parents instill all these different ideologies into us, which are based on society's ideologies, and these basically get ingrained into our brain through the means of conditioning, and this conditioning basically takes place through the means of primary socialization, secondary socialization, and it's all these external voices that we were once told, that were once directed at us, and now coming from us. They've been internalized, and a part of ourselves is, I guess, saying it to us. It's like it's saying it back to us, and basically Freud believed there was three parts to the mind, or three parts to the ego. I don't quite know. So there was the id, which is like the instinctual part, which is it's basically when you're a baby. It's like it cries, it desires things. It's basically very emotionally related. It doesn't have any, I guess, restrictions on it. Any conscious restrictions. It obviously has physical restrictions and yeah, of what it can do, but it's very I guess free, and it acts on instinct. It does what it wants to do. Um and then you move up a level and you've got the ego, and this is basically where we gain a sense of self, our own identity, and we're able to say this is me, and we can look at ourselves in the mirror and recognize ourselves as an individual, as a person having an experience. And so that's quite a big stage of development. And if you could actually imagine that, a baby looking in the mirror and realizing itself for the first time for what it is, that was be quite an amazing experience. Like, I've had experiences like that before on drugs, like psychedelics and stuff. Like looking in the mirror and it's like you seeing yourself, and you're like, holy fuck, that's me. And I imagine that's what babies like, minus the uh, vulgar profanity. Yeah. Okay, so the level up from the ego is basically the superego. And this, it contradicts the id. It's like, it's basically the realization of other people's sense of self. It's learning to interact with other people in the world. And so what this has to do is it has to sort of calm down the ego, because if you've only got a sense of self, then you're going to be a very selfish person. You're not going to be able to function properly in the world. It's all going to be about yourself, and that can be helpful sometimes, but you do need to have an ability to, I guess, empathize with others and recognize that you're not the only person going through life. There are other people too. Um, yeah. So it says here on the sheet that the superego contradicts the id and working on internalized ideals from parents and society. It tries to make the ego behave morally. Yes, that's like what I was saying at the start with when the parents say things to us like, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, you can do that. And it's basically that voice gets internalized inside of us, and we start saying it to ourselves, and that's what we interpret as our conscience. It's like that little voice in our head that's saying, okay, you shouldn't be doing that right now, or that feeling we get. It's basically a feeling that that was once induced in childhood by our parents, perhaps instilling some sort of ideology into us, some perhaps the social norms and values of society. And I can't imagine that being an easy process, and some children seem to get this easier than others, and some find it really difficult. Like, you've got some really rebellious children out there. Maybe that's due to the biology, or maybe it's just due to the way that the parents are bringing them up. And yeah, so that's that. Okay, so talk about ego. Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about the Oedipus Complex right now. Oedipus. Right, Oedipus, it was based on a Greek myth, and I don't know the myth exactly. I was supposed to reread it, but I didn't. It's basically, there was a king and a son and a mother, so she would have been the queen. And basically, the idea behind Oedipus is that the son had sexual desires towards his mother, but his father was getting in the way, so he got jealous of the father and tried to kill the father, and I think eventually did kill the father. So this is basically the idea that all children have a sexual desire towards their opposite sex parent. And this is where Freud gets extremely controversial, because maybe this says more about his mind than it does about society. It's like he heard this one piece of mythology, and it's like he derived a whole theory of development and humanity and psychology around it, with no true evidence to support his claim. And this is why Freud is often labelled as an armchair anthropologist. And it basically means that he sits in his chair thinking up ideas, thinking up stories, thinking up interesting things which may have truth to them. But because he calls himself a psychologist, and because he labels his work as scientific, but his research seems to lack a scientific basis. It's like people have criticised him in that way, and he could be right. He could be right in saying that we do have an underlying sexual desire, which pretty much fuels everything we do in life subconsciously. And I don't think he's completely far off from that, because if you look at a lot of the advertisements that have been on since TVs have come around, things that are sexualized generally sell more. And this is probably because of Freud's idea. But if you look at the smoking adverts from the 50s or 60s, and basically they show these like really gorgeous women smoking with like belly and clothes on and stuff, and it's like that would make people buy them. That would make a man look at it and say, oh well, I want that woman. It would associate the cigarette with the sexy lady. And yeah, and we still do with food as well. If you look at food adverts, it's like they'll do it in slow motion of them like scooping out where like the chocolate cake or something, and they'll put it in the mouth slowly, and then it's like he'll show the lady like licking the spoon at the end. So perhaps Freud wasn't super far off with his work, and it's not completely implausible. But to call himself scientific when his research methods really weren't that, you can see why people have had issues with that. Okay, here's some more stuff about, I think this is linked to Oedipus. Well, it's definitely linked to sex. Yeah, it is. Right. Freud thought the newborn baby was all id, so all instincts, with drives for food, aggression, and sex. Freud thought newborn babies had a desire for sex, right? An important drive is the libido, or the sex drive. Freud defined libido as all the instincts to do with love. As physical being, we have sex drives. Freud thought there were 3 stages. Okay, so yeah, this is a little bit weird. Okay, so the first stage is the oral. This is very much focused around the mouth, and it's nursing at the breast. So, according to Freud, a mother breastfeeding her child was actually sexual for the baby. It probably turned the baby on. I'm not super on board with that. Okay, the second is anal delight in his own ability to control his bowels, but I don't see how this is sexual. I feel like this does say a lot more about Freud's mind than it does the actual reality, because, yeah. Okay, and the third stage is the phallic and his fascination with his sexual organs. Freud thought all these can be seen in infancy, and there is time of quiet or latency with the child. Largely ignores his sexual nature, only for it to re-emerge at puberty. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not buying that. Okay, we can talk a little bit about Freud and religion now. There's an interesting bit in this booklet somewhere. I don't know where. Okay, basically, Freud thought religion was derived from, it was something to do with cause and effect. It's like, we saw natural disasters in the world, or we saw, like, beautiful things, and we wanted to like, know the reason for these things happening, because it's sort of like, if you know why something happens, it can sort of help you deal with it more, I guess. So we invented, like, this father figure, this ultimate father figure, because we also desired, the whole of the human race desired some sort of powerful father figure who could help us and stuff, and that's quite significant, I guess, because it's also a little bit patriarchal. Okay,